So before I launch into this video, I need to give you some caveats right up front. First, I'm a Republican and I'm fully conservative. Second, I support Ukraine and I fully support Ukraine. So with those things being said, I want to launch into what's going on here. So I'm looking at this. This is on Twitter. Just in, Joe Biden vows to send a whopping $700 payment per household that was impacted by Maui wildfires. Can someone please explain to me why our leaders are so reckless with money sent to Ukraine, but then penny pinches when the money is spent on Americans? Billions in property damage, many lives lost, livelihoods ruined, and the best President Biden can do is $700. Well, that's per person. It's not in total. And the idea of being so reckless with the money sent to Ukraine, I wouldn't say that that's a fair statement at all. That's quite an assumption. We are laser focused on getting aid to survivors, including critical needs assistance, a one-time $700 payment per household offering relief during an unimaginably difficult time. Maui should just change their name to Ukraine at this point. Okay, and they're showing some of the damage, the footage in Hawaii. It is horrific what's going on in Hawaii, but what's happening here is this is being used to beat Biden with, and it's an unforced error. An unforced error in baseball is when a baseball player, a hit goes out into the field and the fielder bobbles the ball. He doesn't actually pick it up like he's supposed to, drops the ball or does something like that. That's what's happening here. Here's another picture, and I just want you to see this. This says $700 per family to Hawaii versus $115 billion plus to the war in Ukraine. Let's not worry about the figures. Let's worry about the images that you see here, and then we'll talk about it. So I'm going to just play this for a moment. On the left, you see Hawaii. On the right, you see parties going on the beach in Odessa and in other places across Ukraine. You'll see, signs of parties. Okay, it's pretty compelling imagery when you see the difference between these, and people who already oppose the war in Ukraine will use this to beat Biden with. Now, is it fair? No, it's not a fair difference because they're not showing destruction here and destruction here. Like, they're not showing the rest of Hawaii that looks more like this. They're showing the destruction, the legitimate destruction here, and then they're showing they're showing the worst face here and the best face here. It's kind of like what the trick that they used to do with in the Soviet era was to say what the Soviet Union was like in theory, as opposed to what it was like in practice, right? And when you compare theory to, well, let's compare the U.S. to the Soviets in theory. That's different than compare the U.S. to the Soviets in practice. It's two very different things. So it's really not a fair comparison, but this is the kind of thing that's going to be used by people who already support Russia or don't support Ukraine to beat the Biden administration with. Now, it got compounded the other day because Biden was asked, do you have any comment on the death toll in Maui? And he says, no comment. Okay, so it just looks bad. It's just a bad look because, this is actually the United States and he should be attending to it. And he seems more interested in Ukraine, which is a legitimate thing to be interested in because it could kick off World War III if it's not, dealt with correctly. I give you my reasons right here, 5 reasons why I support Ukraine, and you should too. One of them is that Ukraine is an innocent victim of their neighbor's aggression. But another is that it could kick off World War III. That's, I think, 1 in 5 of my reasons here. But we're not paying attention to what else is going on, like Hawaii, while we need to be paying attention as well to what's going on in Ukraine. Okay, this is an unforced error. Biden, come on, man. You've been in office longer than I've been alive. Seriously, you've been in office 50 years, dude. You should have been able to figure this out. Now your opponents are going to beat you with this. So here's a couple of clips, or a news article rather. Biden rebuked. This is from Fox News. Okay, now some of you will discount Fox News. I watch Fox News pretty regularly. I also watch other news and I try to absorb things from other places, but I watch Fox News as well. And the hard Fox News is pretty fair and trying to be, now they focus on different things, but they try to be even-handed. What you're about to hear from is commentary. And commentary on Fox News is off on the right, off the reservation. Commentary on MSNBC is off on the left, off the reservation. So it's neither of those are claiming to be anywhere near the middle. Biden rebuked for ignoring deadly Maui wildfires, prioritizing Ukraine over the American people. Well, what do you think that your opponents, your political opponents, are going to say about you at this time? Now, your political opponents are always looking for something to chastise you about, and saying you have no comment to the death toll in Maui is going to be something that they're definitely going to use. President Biden was criticized for offering no comment when asked about the deadly wildfires tearing through the Hawaiian island of Maui. The death toll rose to 96. On the Ingraham angle. Now, Laura Ingraham is, she was second only to Tucker Carlson on Fox for being pro-Russia or anti-Ukraine. She's more of the populist, isolationist type, more than the old school conservative like me, the Reagan type conservative. The Ingraham angle on former Assistant Treasury Secretary Monica Crowley suggested that Biden's response again showed the deference he has to the plight of Ukraine over that of the American people. It's kind of a fair point for her to say. It's not true thoroughly, but it is a bad look. I mean, again, this is the way that people are going to be viewing this when they're hearing her talk, right? Why are we doing this when we should be attending to that? It's not fair exactly, but there's some truth in the matter, okay? He's not actually addressed what he needs to address. Now, maybe it's just a matter of time and he needs to, but he should be holding press conferences, talking about how this is going on and doing all the things that need to be done to show that he's actually involved. Okay. American people saying that he acted similarly aloof when the communities in Ohio, Pennsylvania, were drastically affected by the highly toxic aftermath of the Norfolk Southern train derailment there. Also, a bad look. He should have been more attentive to it, and his adversaries, your adversaries are out there. They're going to try to make you look as bad as possible. This is true. Republicans making Democrats looking bad. Democrats do the same thing to Republicans. So that's going to happen. So you should be out there and thinking through this. Host Laura Ingraham remarked how Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky only needs to snap his fingers to get Biden to send Kyiv millions amid Russia's invasion, but that while Hawaii burns, Biden appears content to lounge on the Rehoboth Beach, Delaware. Okay, so it's kind of not fair for her to say that, but again, people will see this. Millions of people will say, that's not right. He should be attending to his own countrymen who are being burned out in the volcano. Well, Joe Biden and his family have enriched themselves. Joe Biden and his family have enriched themselves via Ukraine and that corrupt regime and corrupt players in Ukraine to the tune of billions of dollars, Crowley said. Okay, first, that's an unproven assumption. Even if it was true, and I'm not saying that it is, I'm not sure that there's evidence, at least at this point, to prove that anything has happened. But we'll see when the evidence comes out. So let's suspend that. But it's an unproven assumption used to create the contrast. What they're doing is creating more of this contrast by making that claim. And if it is true, that's shameful. But it doesn't mean that Ukraine shouldn't be supported because they're still being invaded by Russia. So we have to separate these kind of issues. Former Trump officials said that Americans who aren't being affected by natural disasters are already facing a drastic cost of living crisis because Biden and his Democratic Party has spent taxpayer money and accrued debt like drunken sailors. Okay, in fairness, it's not just Biden. However, Biden inflamed it. So during COVID, payments were sent out by Trump, thousands of dollars to each family, and that was going to inevitably cause inflation. It was tamping down, and Biden came to office and he wanted to also send out payments. And I remember arguing with a friend on Facebook about this, about, Biden should get his turn to be able to send out his checks as well. I'm like, well, this is going to cause more inflation. It won't cause more inflation. Look, your paycheck is worth a quarter less than it was just about 6 years ago. A quarter less. If you're an American, because of inflation, your purchasing power is about 75 85 or 80% of what it was just 6 years ago because of inflation, largely due to what we did during COVID. Okay, so what we're doing now is, and they're sending another 700 per family. It's weird. It's so mind-bending because in a different context, they'd be condemning this. But now they're using it as a contrast piece to contrast this picture here. And so that's why they're saying, oh, they're only sending this, but weird, right? So sending this money to Ukraine is important, but they're saying it's compared to all these other priorities at home. And this is where Republicans actually have a legitimate point speaking to their base, this paragraph here, at the same time sending an additional $25 billion to Ukraine. And they compare that. Now, I'm not saying that they shouldn't send it to Ukraine. I think that Ukraine needs to be supported. But they're talking to their base. They're going to say, well, we have all these other priorities here. While the people of the United States are suffering, whether it's the devastated community in Hawaii, whether it's the people of East Palestine, Ohio, whether it's the folks in the border towns, whether it's the people in collapsing cities across America, people suffering from fentanyl crisis, people suffering from higher gas prices and skyrocketing inflation, he does not care. So until you got to that last, he does not care, which is an assumption or an assertion that you have to really, how do you prove that he doesn't care, right? All those other things are very true, right? You can do this or this. It's a classic food or butter kind of thing in economics. Butter or guns thing in economics. So they're making a case that's going to resonate with that base. And unfortunately, if they're already inclined to be isolationist or support Russia or not be very interested in supporting Ukraine, that argument's going to sing. But again, I have to come back to Biden. You've been in office for 50 years, dude. You should have seen this kind of thing coming, and it's an unforced error. It's only championed. Okay, here, Crowley said that Biden politically advertised himself as Scranton Joe, a working class son of blue-collar Pennsylvania and Delaware, and someone who will champion the little guy, but instead he's only championed the big guy himself. Okay, this is classic political, one side, trying to take down the other side, and it works both ways, but it's a bad look. Now, historian Victor David Hansen weighs in. He further notes how former President George W. Bush was heavily criticized for what the media claimed was an ineffective response to Hurricane Katrina in Louisiana and Mississippi in 2005. I remember that. It was a bad look. Bush should have done something more, and he didn't. And he was criticized ruthlessly for that. An area Texas Republican visited and toured with the FEMA director, Michael Brown. Now, this was the look. This is a Newsweek article, The Undoing of George W. Bush, and the picture where he's looking out of the plane, out of Air Force One. Okay, he's looking at Air Force One, and he is not actually on the ground in Louisiana, and so he's tarred as not caring. Okay, yeah, it was a bad look. Hansen said the media criticized Bush for not having large enough waiters to tour the flood zone, while few have criticized Biden's muted response. So that few has criticized Biden muted response is talking about the hypocrisy between the media not chastising Biden for this and chastising Bush for the other. But it's just a bad look, and the right in Fox News, people that are watching this on Fox News and listening to Laura Ingraham and trying to see what's going on here, they are going to buy this argument. Not all of them. There's Reagan conservatives like me that are all in supporting Ukraine. But the ones that are already sympathetic, it's just giving them more reasons, more evidence to oppose what's going on in Ukraine. And it's like, we can't afford that kind of error. Biden, I disagree with Biden on almost everything except for Ukraine. I fully support the funding for Ukraine. I fully support the effort to provide Ukraine with what they need militarily. But dude, you're just handing them a bat to beat you with. Don't do that. Okay. That's what's going on, and I wanted to show the contrast and how people would be thinking and processing that on the right side of the spectrum. If you're a conservative, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, tell me what you see. Is that what's happening? And if you're a liberal, just listen to the conservatives in the comments and see what they have to say to see if I'm saying what is true. All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.